This is Dewan L. Hearn, more affectionately known as the Moon, and this will be me reviewing the WWE Draft. It's a little late, but I'll get into that in a second. Welcome to Moon Equals Wrestling. And the draft was like over a week ago. It goes into effect tonight. This is recorded on Monday the 6th. And it's late. This whole episode is later than I wanted to have it out, but for a really good reason, at least a good reason in my opinion. This past Saturday was the Kentucky Derby, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. So our lives were kind of busy anyway. It's just kind of what we do. So I was busy from like Thursday till today. And here we are. So now we're going to talk about the WWE Draft. Of course, I'm going to talk about some other things that else happened in wrestling. We have a whole ass pay-per-view that's not getting its own episode. But why give it its own episode? We can just talk about it now, right? So we will. But first, talk about the next AEW championship match at Double or Nothing. You know, the Double or Nothing is going to have a few matches. They're building their way there, and it's going to take a minute before they get a full card. But I want to talk about the World Championship match between Swerve Strickland, the champion, and the new number one contender, Christian Cage. I think this is a great match. The match is good because there is the Mogul Embassy that we never really see together, but this will be a really good way of reintroducing the Mogul Embassy as a part of Swerve's faction, as a part of Swerve. And I mean, they both have Nana in common, so I know that there's still going to be a correlation between the two. But when you have the patriarchy, the little group with Kill Switch and Nick Wayne and the gorgeous Mama Wayne, all right, I digress. When you have the patriarchy, that gives a good opportunity to reintroduce the Mogul Embassy. And in introducing the Mogul Embassy, there's a lot of great matches you can have. I mean, I'd love to see Kill Switch versus Brian Cage, or even Brian Cage versus Nick Wayne. I think that would be swell. There's some six-man tags that you can throw into all that. I think that there's a good program you can build leading into and beyond Double or Nothing. More importantly, Swerve must win. Swerve must win. Even taking the historical element of it, I mean, you're talking about the history of AEW. This is your first black champion. You don't want to pull a WWE and have, Brock Lesnar syndrome, where you all of a sudden just have Brock Lesnar take the title off of every single one of your black champions. Every single one. Every single black WWE champion has lost their championship at least once to Brock Lesnar. Do what you want to with that information. Christian Cage is a great challenge. He is. And the character is despised. And with the character being so despised and Swerve being so loved, that helps keep that dichotomy clear. Those lines are clear, and whoever is going to be playing babyface and playing heel throughout the rivalry is now obvious. Those are good, clear, distinct, steady lines. I like that in my story. There is a place for having those lines being more ambiguous. I don't think this is it. I think you need to have these classic matches to define Swerve Strickland's championship title reign. And what better person to have a classic with than the instant classic, everybody's least favorite dad, Christian Cage. Moving on to Backlash, France. It was a good show. It's a really good show. It's a 3 out of 5 show with a 5 out of 5 crowd. The French crowd is what most people are talking about, and they're rightfully so to do. It's it's incredible when you look back at the crowd from Australia, the crowd from Puerto Rico, and the crowd from France. Just how invested they really are. It really shows how we've pulled back, and when we get something all the time, we don't seem to express our appreciation for it as much as other people do. That should be a lesson to American crowds. We need to do that more. Now, of all the matches, out of 5 matches, I think there was 4 championship matches, and of the 4 championship matches, there was one title that changed hands. That's cool with me. I don't always think that a title needs to change hands in every card, but there should be some variety, some movement in championships. I do believe in that. It was the Kabuki Warriors versus Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are the new WWE Women's Tag Team Champions, and I'm okay with that. Most people are okay with that. Most people saw the writing on the walls. It's fine. The Kabuki Warriors, they were heel. They've got the damage control story they can now focus on now without having to focus on subsequent tag team championship matches. But they'll also create this tag team rivalry with Bianca Belair and Cargill. And this is a good thing. Yes, I'm going to go into this and we'll talk about the obvious thing. The Kabuki Warriors are great wrestlers. They are better champions. If I'm being completely honest, Damage Control is holding back the Kabuki Warriors, in my opinion. Damage Control gives the Kabuki Warriors something to do. They give them a group, a faction that they can work with. They don't need it. They've already demonstrated that. They don't need a faction. The Kabuki Warriors work just fine as the Kabuki Warriors. Just Asuka, just Kairi Sane. But the introduction of Damage Control did give everybody a lead in, so this all works, and it gave an excuse and a possibility for those two to get back together, which honestly didn't need a story. They could have just gotten back together. If Road Dogg and Billy Gunn were in the same place wrestling together, you don't need an excuse to put those two together as a tag team. If Edge and Christian are in the same place at the same time, you don't need an excuse to put them together as a tag team if that's what you want to do. If Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas are in the same place at the same time, you don't need an excuse for those two to get back together as a tag team. So I don't feel like there was a need to create an environment where we kind of placed Kairi Sane and Asuka back together. But I'm not mad about it either. Damage Control does what Damage Control does. And Damage Control is doing the things right now. It's great to see such a powerful women's faction compared to the likes of PMS back in the 90s. Cool for Damage Control, cool for the Kabuki Warriors. But this was time. They had the championships. They defended the championships. They did good. I would love to see more championship title defenses on NXT. We don't have a whole lot of women's tag teams, but we are starting to see women group together. Unless Thea Hale's involved, and then like throw the whole thing in the trash, because Thea Hale is awesome, but nobody likes her enough to stick around with her, which to me makes no damn sense. I get that she makes a really scrappy underdog, but come on, guys. Throw Thea Hale a bone here. Unless this is a story that's playing out. I've already seen the seeds for it start to bloom. When Thea Hale was in the back, getting checked out by the trainers after Fallon Henley attacked her, one of the things that she said out loud is, "Why does this keep happening? Why do people keep doing this to me?" And if this is going to be a part of Thea Hale's character growth, I'm here for it. Could be triggering to some people, but I think that also allows people to relate to Thea Hale. And if you push her right, she can show it in the ring. She's already started to. You have the makings of one, a really good baby face in Thea Hale, like a near top tier women's baby face, and hear me out, a great rival for Roxanne Perez. Keep her baby face, but give her some heart. Give her a mean streak. Give her some toughness. Keep her baby face. Let Roxanne be the biggest bitch in NXT. Let her build in this heel character. I like Gil Perez. I like a badass prodigy. Then give me a super badass Thea Hale who's just on a mission. Give it to me. I'll take it all damn day. I think that's a great story. I think that we're on a good track right now. Everywhere's good. The WWE's got some good movement, some good momentum, but elephant in the room. The tag match itself between Bianca Belair, Cargill, and the Warriors. There was the botch. And I know that we don't like to use terms like botch because we feel like that's disrespectful for what's happening, because a lot is happening in the ring at one time. So it was no disrespect intended. Let's talk about the botch, because this was one. Sadly, I've been seeing this attributed in some ways to Jade Cargill, and honestly, I don't think Jade had anything to do with this. There was a spot where I believe Asuka was the legal person in the ring. There was some four-woman interaction. It culminated with Kyrie and Cargill in the ring. Bless you. To me. I thought if I looked into the light, the sneeze would go away. And I'm not cutting any of this out because it's life. So Kyrie goes into facing Cargill. And the referee was saying, no, 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 you're not the legal man. You need to get out. You can't, your pin doesn't count. You're not the legal man, which is good. And I haven't had a chance to watch that match back, but I think the referee was right. The legal man was Asuka. And so all you had to do was get Kyrie to run back, tag Asuka in, have tag her back, and then just go back to doing what you're doing. It's been a really easy fix. Like, oh, I'm not legal. And then just have Asuka run in and, bang, 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 beat her up, and then run back over, tag Kyrie, and continue the spot. It's easy for me to say, but you have to be more fluid when you're in front of a billion people, right? So I'm not going to criticize any of the four women in the ring. However, the way that it did play out was a little confusing. And it's one of those things that, as a wrestling fan that, really pays attention, a wrestling mark, if you will, it's one of those things that we are going to notice and it's going to stick in our brain. And what's really unfortunate is I think it was just really a miscommunication. There's like, when you're calling a bunch of spots, I'm sure that a single is hard to remember, no matter how many years you've been doing it, no matter how many decades you've been doing it, no matter how good you are. You can just be going like, okay, next spot. And you forget to do the actual tag that allows you to be the one to do it. The unfortunate level of this, because they did the spot over again, it was fine. The downside is that there's so much criticism on Jade Cargill right now. And I won't speculate as to why. I want to say maybe because she was such a big deal in AEW. I remember watching Jade Cargill at AEW. I've said this before. Jade was green. She went on TV in AEW. She was green as grass. And I say that again, no disrespect to Jade Cargill or to AEW, but she was green as grass. And she got so much better by the time she got through those 50 wins as TBS champion. Some of them came before, but as she goes into that TBS tournament and then becomes TBS champion, holds it. She's not doing super long matches, but she did get tougher opponents over time. She did get longer matches over time, and she was holding her own. She was showing off. Cool. Now, the AEW wrestling style is a lot different than the WWE wrestling style. There's wrestling, and then there's the styles that kind of go with your respective company, which is what that particular audience is used to. And so a lot of times the wrestling company will teach you or train or have you work a match in that style because it appeals to their particular audience. There's a certain person that watches WWE and a certain kind of person that watches AEW. Let me take that back. There's a certain kind of fan that prefers the style of WWE matches. There's a fan that prefers the style of AEW matches. There's the type of fan that prefers an ECW or ROH style match or a TNA style match, an NWA style match. And there's just something that they like about it. There's part of that aesthetic that they enjoy that goes slightly beyond the wrestling basics that even as fans we're aware of. I won't say that we know because I think that's disrespectful to people who actually do it. We're aware of them. And all in all, I think learning the WWE style would be tricky, um, especially when you have something as a basics already. I don't see it a problem with Cargill, and I think this is the best way to get Cargill into this system. I've said it before. Work her along with Bianca Belair because not because they were the mirror images of each other in different companies, but they were kind of like the Booker T versus The Rock, Goldberg versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, Sting versus The Undertaker. They were kind of mirrored characters. There was Bianca Belair, and there was Jade Cargill. And now that they're together, I think that if you need someone with the aesthetic of Cargill, or someone with the aesthetic of Bianca Belair to learn the kind of style that a person that looks like Bianca Belair, physique wise, does, and where that place is, there's no one better than that person, and that person's Bianca Belair. And ultimately, what we're talking about here is working alongside Bianca, who is a workhorse. I will talk about her a little bit more here in a bit. Working alongside Bianca so closely in this new little faction, this new little group of what do they call them, the big three. I dig it. Working on a better name, whatever. Um, I feel like this is the right course. You can learn on the fly with Bianca. If they're traveling together, you're going to get even more because there is something different about the way WWE does things versus an AEW. And that's going to be the same way no matter where you are. Like if you go from one company to another company that's similar, I'm sure you can't just go from a pizza maker at Papa John's and be a pizza maker at Pizza Hut and it's the same thing. The menus are different, you know. The way they make pizzas are different. Their source of ingredients are different. Their standards will be different. So even though you've been a great pizza maker at Papa John's, it doesn't mean you're going to be a great pizza maker at Pizza Hut because maybe they just do things differently, and that difference isn't for you. I think, in short, we need to look at this match as a study. and use that information from this particular tag exchange, one that everyone's talking about with the Kyrie saying Oscar missed tag and how that got. We watch it, we learn from it, we don't repeat it. I say one more callback to it so that we can say, oh, look, it's a callback. We did it on purpose. And have there be a miscommunication that stops the Kabuki Warriors from winning the championships in a rematch, solidify the title reign. And again, this is not indicative of how good of a wrestler any of the four are, regardless of the criticism on Jade Cargill. I think Jade is fine. I think Jade's going to be fine. Jade's with Bianca. She's working with three of the best women's wrestlers in WWE. Kairi Sane, Asuka, and Bianca Belair. Continue this rivalry. Allow them to work together. Put Asuka in a match with Jade Cargill at the end of that rivalry, because that's the test. Shout out to Kairi Sane, who has the literal best, most beautiful elbow drop on God's green. I don't care who you are. She's got the best match on God, the best elbow drop on God's green. You're dealing with three incredible professionals, WWE top tier women, and Jade's going to be fine. Back off, Jade. Now on to the business. On to the business. Now, this would be where a lot of people probably already have, because I'm late, would go into who got drafted where, who did what, when, why. And if you already know, this is not what I do here. If you want to know how the draft went, there are other podcasts to do that. There are other websites that already have it listed. You've already seen it. They've already posted graphics. It goes into effect on Raw tonight. You don't need me for that. If you are here, then you may like my opinion on things, and I think that's cool. Thank you for that. I love you. If you're interested in anything else I do, visit DewanLHearn.com. I do all kinds of things. Filmmaker, I'm an author, and I have other podcasts. Watch those. They're great. Commercial over. What we're going to do here with this draft conversation is I wrote myself out some questions. I want to kind of discuss and review it. I'm not going to be like, oh, so Raw got A, B, C, and D. No, but I want to talk about why I thought A, B, and C were great picks. Why those were the important ones. Let's just go ahead and get into it. First and foremost, I thought NXT was going to have a bigger role in this. That's probably my biggest gripe with this entire draft. I could have sworn, and I could have been wrong, but I could have sworn that NXT was supposed to have a bigger role. Now, I don't know if there was some reason why they changed plans somewhere in the midst of this. I don't know if it had to do with the timing of the 2-week spring break in. That could have had something to do, because you'd have turned spring break in night 2 into draft night for NXT, like the third draft night. And okay, that would make sense. And you couldn't, because you had spring break in night 1, and then you had draft SmackDown, then you had draft Raw, and then you had break in night 2. So that's probably the number one reason why NXT did not have its own draft night in the same manner that Raw and SmackDown did. And I find that to be a problem. I think it's time that, since we've reorganized the structure of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, they all have general managers again. Kudos to that. Ava's doing a great job in her role. Not sure how she got it, but we don't care anymore. Um, at this point, I'm perfectly fine with just saying, my dad helped me get the job. And I'm cool with it. At this point, fuck it, go with it. Um, but back to the question, I really, really felt that NXT should have had a better, bigger role in this draft process. Also, looking back at the names of who got drafted, I'm disappointed in uh, how few NXT stars got drafted in the first place. I'm trying to see if I wrote a list out, and I know I did. It's a matter of what I did with it. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. I can't even count them on air. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20. That's what I thought. Out of 40 picks, 5. Carmelo Hayes, Kiana James, um, Ilya Dragunov, Lyra Valkyria, Blair Davenport. That's it. That's it. Your biggest representation for NXT was 5 draft picks, over 40 options. And when you have names like Jey Uso, Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, who was already drafted to Raw at one point, he was already a Raw superstar, I believe. Liv Morgan, Ricochet, Sheamus, Alpha Academy, Imperium, Punk, McIntyre, Naomi, Pretty Deadly, Stratton, who's already on SmackDown, um, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles. These people were already on the shows. And I get it. I do. I get it. They said that they wanted that it was just as important to keep people on your show so that the other show doesn't draft who you want to keep. So that has a place. But couldn't you just go ahead and knock out your top 5 people in the first 2 rounds of the draft and then spend one draft finding talent from NXT? No, nothing, nobody. I can't believe that. That's hard for me to believe. I I love what NXT is doing, and I do respect the fact that there is an importance of keeping the stars that you're making, the stars that you're building, the names that you're establishing, and keeping them on the show to keep them on the show so that people continue to watch the show. Yes, Carmelo Hayes was an obvious lift. Dragunov was an obvious lift. Having Tiffany Stratton and Braun Breaker kind of already in those spaces, that's an obvious lift. Those are the obvious ones, and those are good. I'm down. What my problem is, though, and this is no knock to the others that got drafted, the Kiana Jameses or the Blair Davenports. My problem here is that there should have been more involvement from NXT. Otherwise, why bother? Like, why bother? That's my thing. Like, why bother at that point? And I think we're doing NXT a disservice. We could have used the draft to promote more from spring break-in if we're going to have nights 1 and 2. We could have done so much more with NXT. You added the yellow to the draft graphic. You already added the yellow to the graphic. Come on, like, just do more with NXT. Show more respects to the NXT locker room and what they're doing there stylistically. Like, just do better. Do better with that. Do better with that. All right. Number 2. Best thing from the draft is they locked the champions. I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and they were asking me what we're going to do if Cody gets drafted, or if uh, the tag champions get drafted, or something like that. Now, normally they just do a title switch, and I hate that. I hate it. It really, really taints the lineage of the championship. Plus, with the way that they're redoing the shows, they've created these aesthetically similar championship titles. The World Heavyweight Championship looks like the Women's World Championship, looks like the Tag Team Championships. They look together, they look alike. And no, we don't need to make a color. No, they've done the right thing by having these matching championships, and they've done the right thing. Have these championships over here look alike, and those are great. And the fact that they were smart enough to lock the champions is like, hey, if you're champions, you're staying here. Congratulations. You're not eligible for the draft. That was smart, and I'm really glad that they did that. What I would have preferred, though, is on the shows prior to the draft, so the SmackDown before the draft and the Raw before the draft, do a title match. Now, I'll rescind that opinion to a degree because we literally just had WrestleMania a couple weeks prior. I don't think that's immediately fair. So, yeah, I can kind of understand why we wouldn't have done that. So I'm not mad, but just making sure that your champions are worthy of being the champions before they get locked. But if the privilege came at WrestleMania, fuck it, just kind of roll with it. So I'll pull back that last opinion a little bit because I get it, but under other circumstances, if you're going to lock the championships on, make sure your champions are the worthy ones. But I have no problem with any of the current champions right now, except for one, and we already know which one that is. Fuck Logan Paul. Okay, now I digress. So I did a little math. That's what this. That's the point of this sheet was. I did a little math, and 60%, right? 3 out of 5 of the televised selections. I just kind of ignore the other selections that were online. I'm like, 60% of the televised selections for the draft were static, were people just not going anywhere. So the other 40 were NXT call ups or drafts from the other show. And to have a 60-40 like that doesn't make a lot of sense for me. I feel like that's dumb. I feel like it's dumb. I get the story that they were telling. We want to keep a certain person that's eligible for the draft, so we draft them so the other show can't. And I get that. That makes sense to me. It does. But the whole point is for this stuff to get shaken up. If you swap that and only 40% stayed static and you did a whole lot of switching, that's what you do. That's what your online draft thing can be. Trades. Do some trades. Do the drafting and then have like a couple of weeks for trades. Do the online thing for trades. Have a couple of episodes where it's like, hey, make all this. How about we figure something out for my dude so and so? I remember a WWE draft where Triple H got drafted, and then to get Triple H back on Raw, they traded like 3 people for Triple H. So within the course of a week, Triple H was back on Raw despite being drafted, but Raw turned around and lost 3 other people because they were showing the value in Triple H. And this was great for story because it showed how important Triple H was. And I always say you have to treat anything that you do, anything episodic, as if that's the first episode for someone. Because my first episode of Raw was in the middle of a bunch of stories. There's not like, watch this episode of Raw as a new fan. Like, you don't have that. So every episode is somebody's first episode. Have to treat it like it's somebody's first episode. If I'm hearing commentary tell me this guy was traded to SmackDown, but we got him back, but to do so, we had to trade three other people for him, you're doing a 3-for-1 trade. Whatever you were getting meant something to you, valuable to you. It also kind of lessens the value of the three people you're trading, but it turns out that those three guys are really, really good. You're like, wow, these three people are individually very, very good. And we had to give up all three of them for this Triple H guy. He must have been important. So that helps tell the story that sells to the audience this person's important. This is a conversation I've been trying to keep in my mind a lot because, as I've told you, here in July at the Imaginarium convention, there's going to be an entire panel on wrestling and writing. And I cannot wait to show other creatives what you can learn from the space of professional wrestling. It's an amazing thing. And I can't wait to share that. One of the things that I hope we get to bring up is the fact that you have to present your top stars as if they're top stars in such a way that someone who's unfamiliar with wrestling can watch the product and be like, that guy's important. Whether it's Cody Rhodes' Pyro, whether it's the long drawn out entrance for uh, Roman Reigns, whether it's the elaborate entrance for Seth Rollins. I'm talking about WrestleMania here. Um, that's a great way of emphasizing in a intentional way that this person is important. This person is special. Using a regular pop culture radio hit song, something like a Cult of Personality, shows like, oh, I'm supposed to relate and be familiar with this guy in some way. We're using a song that I know and like, or from a band that I know and like. These are all important in that presentation. So there are things that you can do to intentionally condition your audience to know this person is of value. And I feel like we're losing some of this. I think we put too much energy in that, and we didn't get quite the we didn't get quite the result we're looking for. I think that the 60-40 thing should have been swapped and keep your Drew McIntyres, your CM Punks, your whoever else, keep your AJ Styles, keep your Ricochet, keep your Liv Morgans for your story purposes. Uh, keep your Judgment Day for your champion. Um, that would have been a really interesting swap. I would have loved to see what would have happened if Rhea Ripley's on injured, so let's say she's not eligible for the draft, and then Damian Priest is champion, so he's not eligible for the draft. But then, as a collective, Dominic, Finn Balor, and JD McDonough were all drafted to SmackDown. And now you got to see Damian Priest be like, yo, what are we going to do about Judgment Day? It's like, man, I don't think the breakup's supposed to happen just yet. If they are going to do a Judgment Day split, they're in the process of it now. And I think it'll be very interesting when Rhea Ripley returns. I think this might be the call. Let's say that they want Rhea to be a bigger star on her own. She has almost outgrown Judgment Day. So while Rhea's gone, would be a great time to split up Judgment Day. That allows Rhea to come back being like, I don't have to go with my faction. I can either go back on Raw where my rivalries are. I can go on SmackDown where Dominic is, or call that the reason for the split with Dom, reset the character, keep her the Eradicator, keep her mommy, keep all the things See how it plays out. If they're going to do it, now's the time while Rhea's away. She will no longer define Judgment Day while they're gone. Judgment Day will define Judgment Day. Anyway, my point here is should have been a swap on that measurement, and we should have been doing a lot more shaking up. I feel like it seemed pointless to go that route. Now, point four, I want to go over who I think are the best picks from each show. The two people that I guess the best man, the best woman that each show got from the draft, or the best picks. For Raw, Braun Breaker, best male pick for Raw. Sure, there's people that they've kept already, and CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, whatever, they were already there. I think technically Braun Breaker was already there, but to lock him in, have him on there, we're going to establish him. We should be able to establish him as your next top guy. If I had to pick someone to take the belt off Priest, probably be Braun Breaker. Not yet. Priest deserves a good run. Priest has worked hard. He has earned that run. He's earned this championship title reign. And if he does lose it quick, he needs to win it back quicker. Lose the title at the beginning of Raw, demand a rematch by the middle of Raw, get your rematch in the main event of Raw, win your title back. I'm cool with that. I think that gives somebody that fluke win, and then it makes whoever just lost that title super hungry. It looks kind of stupid, but depending on how you do it, there's a way of doing it, makes them look super hungry. I wouldn't be mad if Braun Breaker was the guy to do that. Story you can play in that. I'm just saying you can do that. But I think that Braun Breaker is going to be one of those guys that can be built as Raw's next top star. He can. Am I personally the biggest Braun Breaker fan? No. Nothing against the guy. I don't have a reason to dislike him. He's just not my favorite. However, I do recognize his skill. I do recognize his talent. I recognize his popularity and what he can do, what role he can play. And I believe that that's a good spot for him. Raw's a good show for him. He can show up and show off. I'm cool with that. And I do say that that would be the one. After at least 6 to 9 months, at the very least 6, I'd like to give Damian 9. Let's get Damian to Survivor Series and then have him back in the hunt. I think a hungry former world champion Damian Priest in a December pay-per-view rematch maybe, and destroying people in the Rumble, give Damian Priest that Rumble win and let him go for the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 41. That's it. That's my story. There it is right there. That's what I like. We'll call it, lock it in this episode right now. I want Damian Priest to hold the championship until November, Survivor Series. Lose the championship to someone worthy, Braun Breaker even. And then have him lose the rematch some point in time in December, maybe a day one. Have him hungry, angry, boiling mad over losing that championship. Even worse for losing the rematch. Have him just destroy people from an early number, but not 1 or 2. Let's give Damian Priest 12. 15 at most. I say 12. Have him just come in at 12, clear the ring, destroy everybody. Matter of fact, clean the ring. Restart. Damian Priest holding the ring strong, daring people to come at him. Takes out 13, takes out 14, takes out 15. Gets distracted with 15 coming back for revenge. Does not eliminate Priest. But now you got 16 in there and 17 comes in. Now you got the ring building up with more people. The other stars are coming out. Priest is laying low, but he is still killing it. Give him that top run. Give him the Rumble win in 25. Let Priest win the Rumble in 25. Give him a lock for the world. He wants his world title match back. He wants his world title back. He wants the Braun Breaker. Give me Damian Priest, Braun Breaker, WrestleMania 41. Why not? Right? There's no good reason why not. At this point, Braun Breaker would have been spending the time from November until April because WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas has already been announced. Like the 19th and 20th. You got from November to mid to late April as champion for Braun Breaker. That's a good run for your first world title on the main roster. Do that shit. And then you got an angry, hungry Damian Priest and a on fire champion Braun Breaker. Kill it. And at that point, I don't even care who wins. It's going to be a damn good match. Put money on it. Moon told you first. There you go. Now, Raw's women pick, female pick, Kiana James. I know. I was surprised with that pick too. Give me a sec. That's actually pretty good. I've been avoiding that. It's pretty good. Of French vanilla coffee. It's not my thing, but not bad. Kiana James. I was surprised to see her picked out of all the women on the NXT women's roster. I was kind of hoping for Fallon Henley, but she's in story now with Thea. Cool. Kiana James has that same opportunity Stratton has, right? Where she's establishing herself and going to blossom and grow, being planted in a new garden. The difference between her and Stratton is that I think that Stratton was pretty well established with her NXT championship title run and her match with Becky Lynch. So I think she was well enough established. I think that's why she got called sooner, pre-draft, and that's fine. James, though, has this opportunity to become that person, kind of like the growth we saw from Bailey. Bailey and Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley even are so far beyond from where they started, we kind of forget where it was that they started. Kiana James is on that level. And in about 3 years, we might be seeing Kiana James headlining Manias. That's kind of a push, I know. But can she? Yes. She'll have to go through a slight gimmick alteration, kind of like Tiffany Stratton did. I think that would be good for Kiana James. This works. This can work for Kiana James. I can see her. Did they get drafted? I think they did get drafted. I was going to say her and Chelsea Green. Yeah, they did. Chelsea Green got drafted to SmackDown, which is unfortunate because Kiana James versus Chelsea Green could be a really good match. I think that actually be kind of fun. There's a lot of potential there. There's a lot that Kiana James can do, and I think that'd be beneficial for her. Raw's a good roster for her. She can really cut her chops with your Liv Morgans and your Becky Lynch's. And who else does Raw have now? I have to remember the new roster. Lyra Valkyria, I think, would be good for display match, just to kind of show off, and then get in the way of Liv Morgan and start something with her. If that would be a good way of starting off, Kiana James would probably be with Liv Morgan right now. If I had to put a match tonight on Raw for the new draftees and stuff, Liv Morgan, Kiana James. I think that'd be a good match. So I've mentioned her enough already. My female pick from SmackDown, Tiffany Stratton. You figured it out by now, watching the show enough. I'm a big fan of Tiffany Stratton. The gimmick change, the slight shift that we've done with Stratton, flawless. It's perfect. It's great. It's working for me. She's got presence. Now she's already been part of a triple threat women's championship match. She's established in that area. done it and she's doing it. SmackDown locking that in, that was smart. That's my top female pick uh for SmackDown. Male pick is the obvious one. That's why it's the last one I'm talking about. You can't get a better pick right now than Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes was the it guy in NXT from Jump Street. He was going to get called up. I hate to be that cliche. Carmelo really is him on this roster as far as what these call ups are for. Bringing Carmelo Hayes was a given. If I'm not mistaken, he was the number 2 pick for SmackDown appropriately. I mean, he's Carmelo Hayes. He's already finished his top rivalry with Trick. He's done what he needed to do in NXT. He had that NXT North American. He's had that world. He's good. He did his job in NXT. He got Trick over at the end. Now Trick's running the game. It's good. Now, like I mentioned, Melo was the number 2 pick for SmackDown. These are my thoughts on the number ones. There was the number 1 pick from the first night and the number 1 picks from the second night. Mind you, they had separate draft pools. So those people over here were not eligible over here, vice versa. So the first draft picks for each show mattered. And here are my thoughts. And I'll be honest with you. Let me show you my notes. I had nothing written down. So this is off the dome. My thoughts. Jey Uso being the first pick for Raw. That's telling. Seeing the intro in France, that's telling. People are behind Jey Uso as a single star. I'm a huge fan of the Usos as the tag team. Jimmy's injured, so he's not doing anything right now. But then now that becomes the most legit question right now. Jimmy's cleared, whenever that happens, what to do about the Usos. Now, the Bloodline stayed on SmackDown, and I do believe that Jimmy doesn't count. He got kicked out right before that. So Jimmy doesn't count. So Jimmy can go on. I didn't see if he got drafted anywhere subsequently, but I'm going to assume that Jimmy will still be on SmackDown. And if Jimmy's still on SmackDown, then there's going to be a Bloodline reunion of some sort. I think that's where we're going. I think seeds were planted when the Bloodline walked past Jey Uso in the back preparing for his title match. Those seeds have now been planted in the eyes of the fans for story purposes. So now what do? Jey Uso is killing it right now. He's not showing it in the ring as far as wins, but he's over with the crowd. So that's telling for WWE. Put some W's in his column. I know he won that contenders match, and you had him lose some shady business with the Judgment Day involvement. That's cool. So we're trying to protect Jey. That means he needs gold. He needs gold now. He needs singles gold. He needs single gold like yesterday. If he's going to stay on Raw, that means the IC Championship. Right now, that means Sami Zayn. You're going to have to create a situation where it's Sami Zayn versus Jey Uso. And this can go one of only 2 ways. It's going to really, really work, or it's going to really, really fail. There will be no in between. They have so much history. They are both so beloved that I don't know if that's something you really want to do. You may want to create a transitional champion here. I hate to qualify someone with that, but you may want to have a transitional champion, someone that we're going to hate. Not a Bronson Reed, definitely a Chad Gable. This is where we have Alpha Academy reluctantly take the title of, cost Sami Zayn the championship. Chad Gable is walking around with it. Jey Uso takes it from him. This can cause some discrepancy with Sami Zayn later. That can be a rivalry. I'll take the match. It's fine. Make sure it's done right. Make sure it's done really, really good, because you're going to split the crowd, and that can hurt both of their momentums. Gotta make sure to play it right. But I think Jey Uso was a good call, because Jey is over as a singles. Do something with that. You've almost closed the window on LA Knight, and I'm a little upset about that, because LA Knight is still over, but that heat is gone. The fire has died down. It is time to reignite that fire now. Did he get to go to Raw? Tell me he did. Tell me he did. No, he didn't. LA Knight is still on SmackDown. He probably should have been moved to Raw. That gives him an excuse to have to start over. Because right now you've let that fire die out with LA Knight. And I'll get into this whole other thing later on a different episode. But that's one of the problems you had with having the Roman Reigns championship. Title reign as long as it was. Because you have a guy who was built up so much like LA Knight. Let that die out. That fire is dying. The light is dimming. LA Knight's still that good, and he's still popular, but the big energy that he had falling behind him has now faded away. Almost closed the door on him. He needs gold too. He needs gold now. You need to book Logan Paul, LA Knight, for LA Knight to win the championship today. He's on SmackDown. I'll give it a Friday. But that should be Logan Paul's next opponent. It needs to be LA Knight, and it needs to be LA Knight now. Moon said it first, right here. I don't even think I'm first in saying that, but it needs to be. Bianca Belair, smart. Period. Number 1 overall draft pick. That's telling. That shows everybody that she has now hit that echelon of where she is one of the most respected women on the roster. Well deserved. She's earned that. She deserves that. She earned that number 1 overall pick. Deserved that. I'm glad she got it. And this goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Let her do her thing. Let her, Kyrie, Asuka do their thing. Let them help Jade. Jade Cargill, first SmackDown pick on the second day. Obviously. You're going to establish this situation. You're going to establish this thing. You're going to establish this group. It's important. This shows where the investment is in Jade Cargill. They're putting money behind her. They're putting energy behind her. They're putting their number 1 woman, female star behind Jade Cargill to endorse and move forward. Yes, I'm putting Bianca number 1 over Lynch, over Morgan, over Rhea. Belair's number 1. There's an argument for Rhea. I'd hear that debate out. That's a worthy one. We'll say arguably number 1. Arguably number 1. That's cool either way. Imperium. And this is just Gunther and Kaiser. That's how I feel about it. I really, honestly, they shouldn't have broke up Imperium. That was dumb. If you're going, I'm going to reserve judgment to see what they do with Vinci from here. Okay, Giovanni Vinci. We'll see where he goes from here. We'll see how this plays out. If they're doing that whole Italian stallion look at me thing that they were gonna do, just hang that up. I didn't know. It's not for me. Again, I'll reserve judgment to see what they do. Figure it out. But honestly, number one pick, not Gunther worth it? Probably. Yeah. But yeah. The thing that makes Imperium such a great group, they already broke them up. They split it up. So Imperium as a tag team, Imperium as a three-piece, yeah. Now, there have been some speculation that this is where they're going to include Ilya Dragunov, which I can see that happening over time. Don't do like we're doing with the Bloodline thing, where people just show up as their new members. Shout out to Tangaloa for joining the Bloodline, but I feel like this will be better if you slightly slow. Don't make it official off the top. Don't be like, the newest member is. No, let Ilya do his thing. Let Walter pop out every once in a while. Um, let them have a match. And then when someone, um, and then like just pull an angle, where Ilya then defends Gunther and joins Imperium that way. But let's have Walter Dragunov 3 first. Make it a good one. Because Walter Dragunov 1 is a good run for my favorite match of all time. All right, now it's Undertaker Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 25, but Dragunov Walter 1 NXT UK, it's a very strong contender for number 2. Very strong contender for number 2. Favorite match of all time. I'll rewatch them both within the next week, and maybe next week I'll tell you whether or not one won over the other. We'll see. But yeah, that's. I mean, I just don't feel like it's gonna. I don't feel like it. Whatever they're gonna do with this angle is not worthy of the number one pick, in my opinion. Um, Such is life. That's it. Those are all my questions. Those are what I got. Those are my thoughts. Those are my notes. That's my review overall of WWE, of the WWE draft for this year. I think we're going to be okay. I think that there's some good shakeups starting tonight. We can do some good stuff for the next year. I think we have some great stars that are being given the opportunity to do the thing. And let's let them do the thing. Right? So, if you've enjoyed this show, I appreciate you. Thank you for just even watching this long. It's been an hour. So, countdown clock here in the corner. But you're seeing it down here on the bar. It'll be over here, I guess. You enjoyed this, then hit the like, hit subscribe, ring your notification bell. Why not? What does it cost you? Absolutely nothing, but it means a lot to me. I'm Dewan L. Hearn, more affectionately known as the Moon, and this, of course, has been Moon Eagles Wrestling.